muscles in the body. But if you have to use it, check out those models in the Bible.
Is there like certain like exercises that we can do?
About that. Okay, so today we'll talk about the new system, the muscular system. In today's lecture, we'll cover the following things. First, we'll talk about the functional groups of muscles. You know that we have many muscles in our body. We divide those muscles into different groups based on their functions. So based on their functions, we divide the muscles into different groups. We'll see what are those functional groups of muscles, how we divide. Then we'll talk about naming the muscles, how we name different muscles of our body. Then we'll talk about the arrangement of muscle fibers. Some muscle fibers are straight, vertically, some muscle fibers are horizontally, some muscle fibers are oblique. So we'll see the arrangement of muscle fibers in the muscles. Then we'll talk about the major skeletal muscles of the body. That means we'll see, identify the skeletal muscles of our body. Identification means how they look like, where they are located, and those things. Okay. Then we'll talk about first we'll talk about the facial expression and mastication muscles. That means the muscles of your face that help in mastication, digestion of food, that is chewing the food, and facial expression. You know that when we get angry or happy, our expression of face changes. So which muscles help in mastication and facial expression, we'll see that. Then we'll talk about the respiratory muscles. Respiratory muscles help in our breathing, so we'll see which muscles are respiratory muscles. Then we'll talk about, we'll go down further, we'll talk about abdominal muscles. Those muscles form the wall of the abdomen. So we'll see which muscles are present there. Then we'll talk about further down, we'll go further down, we'll talk about the pelvic muscles. The muscles present in the pelvic part of the body. Then we'll talk about the muscles of the back, in the back part of your body, and shoulder muscles. Remember, this lecture is also very useful for your lab, because in the lab you will identify different muscles in your body, or models. So you see we have models of muscles. You will identify the muscles of the body in the lab too. So this lecture is useful both for your lecture part as well as for your lab section. Okay, now first, functional groups. We divide the muscles into 4 functional groups. What are those? Prime movers, antagonists, synergists, and fixators. Prime movers are the muscles, those are the main muscles, help in particular movement. I'm repeating again, prime movers are the muscles, main muscles, those help in the movement of a particular joint. For example, here in front of your arm, the main muscle here is the biceps brachial, and this muscle helps in the flexion of your forearm, like this. Okay, so this is the main muscle. Biceps brachii is the main muscle for the flexion of the forearm. There are other small muscles, but main one is the biceps. So biceps is the prime mover. main mover of this joint, elbow joint, flexion of the forearm. Now, antagonists are the muscles. They do the reverse action, opposite movement. For example, this is the flexion of the forearm. Who is the main muscle? Biceps, right? Biceps is the prime mover. Now, in opposite direction, if you want to move the muscle in the back of the arm, that is the main muscle, triceps. Triceps help in the extension. So biceps help in the flexion, and triceps help in extension. So for this movement, like look at me, for this movement, who is the main muscle? Biceps, right? So biceps is the prime mover. In opposite movement, who is the main muscle? Triceps here, okay? So triceps is the antagonist. Now you tell me, if I talk about the extension of the forearm, extension, I'm talking about extension of the forearm. Who is the main muscle? Triceps. So if I talk about extension, who is the prime mover? Triceps. You got it? Because triceps is causing the main movement, right? And antagonist is the biceps in that case. So same muscle could be prime mover or antagonist based on each movement they are following. Did you get it? Okay. So that's the prime mover and the antagonist. Now, synergies. When you cause the flexion of the forearm, again same example, biceps is the main muscle, but there are a couple other muscles. They do the same movement, but with action they have. So those are the synergies. They help the main muscle to cause the movement. Like I am pulling something, and my son, small son, is trying to help me to move that, right? So I am the prime mover, and he is the synergist. So main muscle is the prime mover, and the small muscles, weaker muscles, helping in that movement, those are the synergists, okay? And so synergist, just know that, add additional force to the movement. Then fixators. When, for example, you see your wrist joint here, and you can move your hand in different directions, right? Now, if I want to move my hand at wrist joint this way, flexion of the hand, then there are some tiny muscles here. They stabilize the joint, prevent the sideward movement, because this joint moves in all different directions, right? So when you want to only move this way strongly, there is a chance that your hand will move sideways a little bit or in different ways. So those are the muscles. Stabilize the joint first, and then you can make strong movement in particular direction. Did you get it? So there are some muscles, they stabilize the joints, and then the main muscle acts. So those muscles stabilize the joint. Those are called the fixators. They will first fix that the hand will not move to the side, because we don't want that movement. That's the unwanted movement. We want only this way movement. So they will prevent sideway movement. Then you can do strong movement. Okay, so those are the fixators. Okay, so those are 4 groups based on their functions, how they perform their functions. Now we'll talk about naming of the skeletal muscles. How we name the skeletal muscles of our body. Different muscles are named in different ways. We name some muscles of our body based on their locations, where they are located. Best example, temporalis. You have a muscle here. Why it is called temporalis? Because this is the temporal part of the body. You know that. Frontalis, occipitalis. Make sense? Those are named based on their locations. We have some muscles. Those are named based on their shape. For example, deltoid. Delta shape muscle here, that's the deltoid. So based on the shape of the muscle. Okay. Then relative shape, other examples. For example, in the back of your body, you have a huge trapezoid shaped muscle that is called trapezius. Trapezius, kite shape, like this. Okay. So based on the shape. Rhomboideus. In your back, you also have rhomboideus muscles because their shape is rhomboid shape. So trapezoid shape, rhomboid shape, deltoid shape. Based on the shape, you see those muscles have been named. Relative size. Maximus, medius, minimus. Example. You have gluteus muscle here in the back. The largest one is called the gluteus maximus. The medium-sized one is called gluteus medius, and the smallest one is called gluteus minimus. So you see, based on the size, you can name the muscles. Then some muscles we name based on the direction of the fibers, the muscle fascicles. For example, rectus, rectus abdominis. Here you have a muscle. Rectus means straight. So if you see that muscle, the fibers going straight downwards like this. So rectus. Rectus means straight. Abdominis because it is located in the abdomen. Rectus femoris, external obliquus, oblique. The fibers are going not straight like this, not horizontal, but oblique. This is oblique, this is oblique. So if you see the fibers are going like this, some of those muscles are named after the direction of the fibers, like obliquus, transversus, fibers are going like this, transversus, and rectus going like this. Number of origin or heads, biceps. Why it is called biceps? Because it has two heads, or two starting. From 2 points, the muscle start. Okay. Triceps in the back, it has 3 heads. That's why it is called triceps. So based on the number of origins or head, you can name the muscle. Location of attachment. By looking the attachment, we name some muscles. For example, best example, sternocleidomastoid. This muscle, when you turn your head, the prominent muscle here, that is called sternocleidomastoid. Why it is called sternocleido? Because the lower end of this muscle is like this. One end is attached to the sternum, another end is attached to the clavicle. Clavicle is cleido. So sternocleido, and upper end is attached to the mastoid process here. You know that in the temporal bone, right? So sternocleidomastoid. You see how beautifully it has been named based on the attachment. Action. Many muscles of our body are named based on their actions. For example, flexor muscle, flexor carpi radialis, extensor carpi radialis. So flexor will cause the flexion, extensors will cause the extension. This is flexion, this is extension. Abductors, this is abduction, this is adduction. So those muscles help in those kind of movements. Some of those muscles are named based on their actions. Okay. So that's how we name the muscles of our body. Here you see the arrangement of muscle fascicles or fibers. In our body, the skeletal muscle fibers can be arranged in different ways. You see the top left one, the fibers are round, circular fibers. And those muscles have circular fibers. Those are called orbicularis. orbicularis indicates circular or round. Where we have orbicularis muscles, orbicularis muscle is present around your eye. That muscle is called orbicularis oculi, and the muscle, another muscle here, that's called orbicularis oris. Oris means oral, mouth, and oculi is eye. So around the eye you have one orbicularis, and around the mouth we have orbicularis. Okay. In some muscles you will see parallel muscle fibers going side by side parallelly. Those are called sartorius. Example. So in some muscles you will see the muscle fibers are going side by side. Bipinnate, there should be, okay. So unipinnate, bipinnate, and multipinnate. They should put side by side. I don't know why they did it. So unipinnate, bipinnate, and multipinnate. If you see the muscle, this is the tendon of the muscle. Okay, this is the tendon. And if you see that muscle fibers arise from one side of the tendon, like this. That is called unipinnate. Okay, so the muscle fibers are present in one side of the tendon. That is uni. Uni means one. Okay. Now, if you see that muscle fibers arise from both sides, muscle fibers are present in both sides of the tendon. In that case, this muscle is called bipinnate. Okay, from both sides. Now, if in the muscle you see more than one tendon, this is another tendon. So this is one tendon, this is another tendon, and you see muscle fibers from there. So in that case, we say multi. So unipinnate, bipinnate, multipinnate. In multipinnate, you will see more than one tendons. Okay, so this is, you see the tendon from one side, unipinnate, tendon in the middle, and from both sides you see the fibers, bipinnate, and many tendons and muscle fibers arising from them. That's the multipinnate. Convergence. What is convergence and divergence? Convergence means if many things come from different directions and meet at one point. For example, this is the point, and fibers are coming from different directions and meeting here. That is called convergence. Okay? So some muscles we see in our body like this arise from different parts of the bone. Like if this is a bone, different parts of the bone and fibers meet at one point. So that is a convergent muscle. So the fibers are converging at one point. Opposite of convergence is divergence. You know that divergence is from one point to many points, and from many points to one point is convergence. We don't see divergence muscle, we see convergence. For example, pectoralis major. Pectoralis major is this muscle. You see here, like this, like this. So starting from different ribs and meeting here at one point. Okay, head of the humerus. So that's the pectoralis major. That's the convergence. So those are different types of arrangements we see in muscle fibers. Okay. Probably if you have studied botany, you have seen the leaves, or you don't need to study. When if you are interested to see the leaves of plants, you'll see unipinnate leaf, bipinnate leaf, multipinnate. Have you seen that? Like inside the leaf you have the stem, right? That's the stem part, and in some leaves you'll see that the leaf is coming from one side of that stem, like this, unipinate. And some leaves, most of the leaves, both sides, bipinnate, right? So, same thing here in the muscles. Okay, now we'll start to identify the muscles of our body. First, we'll talk about the muscles of the head. This is the head, and in your head or skull, you have two parts. You already know that, cranial part and facial part. Okay, so the muscles attached to the cranial part, those are the cranial muscles. Muscles attached to the facial bones, those are facial muscles. That's why together we can say craniofacial muscles. You know, craniofacial surgeons, we say craniofacial surgeons. They only work on this part. Okay, so let's see the cranial muscles first. Temporalis are attached to the temporal bones. You have temporal bones in both sides, and temporalis muscles are attached to the temporal bone. And then we have occipitofrontalis. Occipitofrontalis is a single muscle. Developmentally, it is a single muscle. It develops from single source. That's why we say occipitofrontalis. It has two bellies or two ends. The occipital end is here, or occipital belly is here, and frontal belly is here. In the middle, you don't have any muscle fibers. You have white connective tissue sheet. That is called gala aponeuretica or epicranial aponeurosis. You'll see in the pictures. So just know that occipitofrontalis is one muscle. It has two bellies. Occipital belly is attached to the occipital bone, and frontal belly is attached to the frontal bone. And two bellies are connected by a white connective tissue sheet that is called gala aponeuretica. Oh, it is here, gala aponeuretica or epicranial aponeurosis. And this muscle have alternate actions of pulling the skull forward and backward. When you do like this, you know, sometimes we do like this, we pull the skull backwards, or you can pull the skull forward a little bit. You can do that. That movement is helped by occipitofrontalis muscle. When you squeeze your eyebrow with this muscle, mostly. Okay, so we'll see those muscles in picture. See here, from the side, you can see the temporalis, and this is the occipitofrontalis muscle. A single muscle, it has two bellies. This is the frontal belly, this is the occipital belly. They are connected by that connective tissue sheet. That's the gala aponeuretica or epicranial aponeurosis. Now we'll see the facial muscles. We have a number of tiny muscles in our face. So those are the facial muscles, helping two things, mastication and facial expression. But facial muscles are not very large, they are small muscles. What are the facial muscles we have? Orbicularis oculi, levator labii superioris, levator labii inferioris, zygomaticus major, zygomaticus minor, buccinator, some people say buccinator or buccinator. Fine. Okay. I say buccinator. Okay. Then orbicularis oris, masseter, depressor anguli oris, rhizorius. So those are the facial muscles. Now we'll see where they are located. So orbicularis are round or circular muscles. We have talked about that. So this is the orbicularis oculi or oculi. This is the orbicularis oris. Oris means around your mouth. So orbicularis means round or circular muscle. Then the strongest muscle of the face is the masseter. So masseter is the strongest muscle of the face, and that muscle you use to bite or chew something very strongly. If you clench your teeth, you can easily feel that muscle. Try that. This is the strong, clench your teeth and see this muscle gets very strong. This is the masseter. Sometimes you will see in TV shows, they show that the person is fighting, holding a rope by teeth and pulling the car or something heavy. That's the muscle here, masseter. Okay, it's very powerful muscle, strong muscle. Strong bite is helped by this muscle. Then if you remove the masseter, under the masseter you have another pretty big muscle that is called buccinator. You can see only a small part of buccinator here because most part is under the masseter like this. Okay, so this is the buccinator, mainly located under the masseter. It is another big muscle of the face. Then levator labii superiors. This one. When you will hear levator, just think that elevator lifts up. Okay? So levator will do what? Move up, lift. Labii. Labii means lip. Superiors. Which way? It will move up. Okay? So it will move the upper lip upwards. So now if you know the function, you can tell the location of that muscle. That must be like this. And when that muscle will contract, it will move the upper lip upwards. So levator labii superioris will do what? Move the lip upwards. So must be here. See here, when this muscle will contract, it will move the upper lip up. Depressor labii inferiors, just opposite. Depressor will move down, labii, what? The lip. Inferiors, located below, and will move downwards. So levator labii superioris and depressor labii inferioris, just opposite. Depressor anguli oris, here. This muscle is actually, this picture is showing kind of straight down, but this muscle is actually like this. So depressor anguli oris like this, and this muscle is like this. So when that muscle will contract, it will depress the lip, but not straight down, not inferior. Which way? In angular direction, right? This is angular direction. That's why this is depressor anguli oris, and also attached to the side of the lip, side of the mouth. So that is another muscle. Now mentalis is this muscle in this part, attached to the mental area in the mental. You know, this is the mental part, so attached here. Risorius or risorius is this muscle, straight going laterally, attached to the side of the mouth like this. And this muscle is interesting. This muscle is called smile muscle. Makes sense, because when you smile, your mouth opens sideways, right? Did you notice that when you smile, your mouth opens sideways? So these muscles risorius help in making the mouth wider, sideways. So that's why this is called the smile muscle. Zygomaticus major and zygomaticus minor. Very simple. If you see, the muscle is attached to the zygomatic bone. Two muscles are attached to the zygomatic bone. The larger one is the major and the smaller one is the minor. Okay? So zygomaticus are attached to the zygomatic bone. So those are the important facial muscles you need to know. And when you see the models, if you understand what I said, it should be easy for you to identify. 4 muscles are involved in mastication, chewing the food. Those muscles help in digestion, breakdown of the food. Which muscles? Temporalis, masseter, medial and lateral pterygoids. Okay? So temporalis, although you know that temporalis is located here, right? Here. Why? How that muscle helps in mastication? Remember that muscle is attached here, but the lower end of that muscle gets attached to the upper part of the mandible here, just below the temporomandibular joint. So that muscle, when that muscle contracts and relaxes, it can move the mandible up and down because the joint is here. Okay, it works on this joint. So that's why it is a muscle of mastication. Then masseter is the most powerful one, as you know here, that is strong muscle. Medial and lateral pterygoids. Those muscles I did not show you when I talked about the facial muscles. The reason is those muscles are in very deep part of the face. If you remove all other muscles, superficial muscles, then you will be able to find them. So that's why I didn't see them. So we'll see temporalis here, you see masseter, and then you see the lateral and medial pterygoids are a very deep part of the face. So if you remove all those muscles, superficial muscles, those are the deep muscles that are in the very deep. So those 4 muscles, lateral, medial pterygoid, temporalis and masseter, are called muscles of mastication. I may ask you in the test that which 4 muscles are called the muscles of mastication. Okay, so you need to know those 4 muscles. Okay. Muscles help in the tongue movement. Movement of tongue is very important. You know that tongue performs a number of important functions. When we talk, we use our tongue, right? We move our tongue when we talk. When we eat, for digestion, we use our tongue, move our tongue to mix the saliva with the food. To push the food backwards, that's the swallowing. That is also helped by tongue, right? So tongue has a number of important functions and movement of tongue is very important. So which muscles help in the movement of the tongue? Those muscles must get attached to the tongue from outside. Then they can help in the movement of the tongue. And just remember one thing, to know the muscles help in the movement of the tongue. Glossus. The term glossus indicates tongue. Glossus is the tongue. Okay? Another name of tongue. So, many tongue muscles, those muscles help in the movement of tongue, are named as glossus. The last part you will see glossus. So if I ask you, give you a muscle that ends with glossus and ask you what kind of function this muscle will perform, just say that this will help in the movement of the tongue because glossus is the tongue. So we'll see important muscles that help in the movement of the tongue. Styloglossus, hyoglossus, genioglossus. So you see those muscles end with glossus. So just remember that. If you see glossus ending with glossus, that's the muscle helping the movement of the tongue. Now, styloglossus. You know this is the styloid process. You already know that. Very sharp, very pointed process coming down from the temporal bone. This is the styloid process. So styloglossus. One end is attached to the styloid process and the other end is attached to the tongue. That's why it is called the styloglossus. Hyoglossus. Makes sense. Hyoid bone is here. You know this is the hyoid bone. The muscle is attached to the hyoid bone one end, the other end is attached to the tongue. So that's why it is called hyoglossus. Okay. Genioglossus attached to the mandible one end and other end is attached to the tongue. So those are the few important muscles help in the movement of the tongue. Anterior neck muscles. Those muscles are located in the front of your neck. Okay. Here they have shown the deep muscles of the anterior of the neck. But first, one thing you need to know, which is not seen in this picture, a thin, flat muscle that covers the whole front of the neck, that is called platysma. That's like a bed sheet that comes down from the mandible here. The upper end of platysma is attached to the mandible like this, and it draps down like this. It's a thin muscle, comes down from the mandible. Yes.
Could you write that on the board, like just the name of it?
Platysma. Okay. So it's a thin, flat muscle that covers the whole front of the neck. Now, if you remove that platysma, then you will see the other muscles. When you see the anterior neck muscles, you will see that many of them ends with hyoid. Why? Because you know that in the front of the neck, only bone is the hyoid bone. Hyoid is the only bone in the front of the neck here. And that bone supports the anterior neck muscles. That's why anterior neck muscles get attached to the hyoid bone and the name has hyoid. The end part of the muscles, many of those muscles are hyoid. For example, mylohyoid, stylohyoid, omohyoid. See, all those are ending with hyoid because those muscles get attached to the hyoid. Okay, so hyoid. Stylohyoid. Styloid process, from the styloid process to the hyoid bone. Stylohyoid. Thyroid cartilage. This Adam's apple is called thyroid cartilage. So the muscle is attached to the thyroid cartilage and the hyoid bone. That's why it is called thyroid. Okay. So just know that most of those muscles end with hyoid. That is one thing. So if I ask you, thyroid is a muscle of the back of the neck or front of the neck or a muscle of the face, you should know, right? Because it's ending with hyoid. Should be in the front of the neck. That is one thing. Platysma, you have to remember, that's the thin flat muscle, covers the whole anterior part of the neck. That's the platysma. And another muscle you need to remember sternocleidomastoid that I have mentioned attached to the sternum, clavicle and the mastoid process. So this muscle is the prominent muscle when you turn your neck, when you turn your head, that muscle gets more prominent. Okay, so just if you see the muscle is ending with glossus, that's the muscle for the movement of the tongue. If you see the muscle ending with hyoid, that's the anterior neck muscle. Okay, so the question will be like this: thyrohyoid or stylohyoid is a muscle of what? Anterior neck part. If I ask you platysma, sternocleidomastoid, those are also neck muscles. And if I ask you stylohyoid, it is a muscle that helps in the styloglossus, it's a muscle that helps in the movement of the tongue. Yes?
On the lab test, where you have something that says something like that, like a question, that's what that ironing that muscle is?
Lab test will be very similar to the test you have taken just, yes.
Thank you.
Muscles of the back of the neck. When you will see the muscles of the back of the neck, just remember two words that would be helpful. One is splenius. If you see the term splenius, that's the muscle of the back of the neck. Splenius capitis, splenius cervicis or cervicis. So those are the muscles of the back of the neck. Okay? So just remember splenius, then it will be easy for you to say that this is the muscle of the back of the neck. Muscles help in keeping the spine straight, erect. Those muscles are attached to the vertebral column. Those muscles are attached to the vertebral column. They help to keep the vertebral column or spine straight and erect. And just know a couple of those muscles. The most powerful one is erector spinae. Erector spinae. Its name is telling you. See here, erector means it will keep the vertebral column erect, and spine is the vertebral column. So erector spinae is the muscle that keeps the spine erected, standing straight. Okay. Now, erector spinae muscle is actually not a single muscle. It is a group of muscles. We say erector spinae is a group of three muscles. Which three muscles? Iliocostalis, longissimus, and spinalis. So just remember this part that I said, that which is the most powerful muscle to keep the vertebral column straight, that's the erector spinae, and which three muscles group together to form the erector spinae. You need to know. If I ask you which three muscles group together or are present in erector spinae, those are iliocostalis, longissimus, and spinalis. Okay. Okay, muscles of the thorax. So now we are done with the neck muscles. We have talked about the muscles keep the spine or the vertebral column straight. Now we talk about the muscles of the thorax. In your thoracic part, you have two types of muscles: respiratory muscles and non-respiratory muscles. So in the chest or thorax, you have respiratory and non-respiratory muscles. Respiratory muscles help in what? Respiration. So respiratory muscles are the muscles that help in the breathing. Okay? Those muscles move the thoracic case, the ribs, forward and backward. Muscles of respiration are external intercostals, internal intercostals, and diaphragm. Inter means in between, and costal indicates rib. So intercostal muscles, intercostal, in between the ribs, like this. They are actually attached to the ribs, in between, located in between the ribs. So intercostal muscle. There are two intercostal muscles. One is like this, another is like this. So this is the external intercostal, this is the internal intercostal. Okay. So those muscles help to move the ribs forwards and backwards. That helps in breathing. Diaphragm. Diaphragm is a flat muscle that separates the thoracic and abdominal cavity. So it is like this. Diaphragm is located here. It is a flat muscle like this that separates the thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. And your lungs. Why diaphragm is a respiratory muscle? Because your lungs are sitting on the diaphragm, attached to the diaphragm. So when diaphragm moves down, it moves the bottom part of the lung down, so the air gets in. So it moves like this and pulls the bottom of the lung downwards like this. Okay. So just know that it moves. Diaphragm moves like this, up and down, and pushes and pull the bottom of the lung. Pushes it up and pulls it down. Okay. So here you see the intercostal muscles, both external and internal. They are attached to the ribs. Okay, so those are the respiratory muscles of the thorax. Now I'll just mention a couple of non-respiratory muscles in the thorax. You know that here the main muscle, the largest muscle in your thorax is the pectoralis major. Pectoralis means chest. So in your thorax you have pectoralis major. Pectoralis means chest, so it is thoracic muscle, and you have pectoralis minor. Okay, so those are non-respiratory muscles. Those are present in the thorax, but they don't participate in or help in the breathing. Okay, so just know that we have also non-respiratory muscles. Now we'll see the muscles of the abdominal wall. In your abdominal wall, you have 4 muscles. Internal obliquus, also called internal obliquus abdominis, because it is a abdominal muscle, an abdominal muscle. External obliquus abdominis, or external oblique, same thing. Transversus abdominis and rectus abdominis. Okay, so those are the 4 muscles of the abdominal wall. First, the rectus. Rectus means what? Say loud. You are straight. Do you remember I said that rectus straight? the arrangement of muscle fibers. So some muscles are named after the arrangement of fibers. If you see the straight muscle fibers, rectus. And at that time I told you rectus abdominis is here. Rectus abdominis muscle is located in the middle of the front of the abdomen. So in the very center. Okay? Going like this here, going like this, and located here. The middle of the front of the abdomen. And fibers go straight down like this. That's why it is called rectus. Rectus what? Abdominis, in the abdomen. Then if you see the side part of the abdominal wall here, you don't have rectus abdominis, you have other three muscles. The outermost one is called external oblique. External means outer, and oblique means the fibers are going obliquely like this. So beautifully named, you see. External is the outer, and oblique means fibers are not straight down, not transverse. Fibers are like this. This is oblique, right? This is oblique. How about this? If the fibers go like this, is it straight or transverse or oblique? Oblique. So you see, oblique could be this, and how about this? Oblique too, right? So external oblique is going like this, and internal oblique is going like this. Both are oblique, right? This is oblique too, this is also.
So just like diagonal.
Yeah, and that actually makes the wall more powerful. If all fibers go in the same direction, the wall will be weak. If they go into opposite direction and make the wall, that will be more strong. Okay, so you have external oblique, the fibers are going like this, internal oblique, fibers are going like this, and then you have another muscle, the fibers are going like this, that is what? Transverse, right? Transversus abdominis. So very simple, rectus abdominis, external oblique, internal oblique, and transversus abdominis. The fibers are going transversely. Okay, so those are the muscles. Now, abdominal muscles perform a number of very important functions. What are those? Flexion of the trunk, upper part of the trunk. This is the trunk, upper part of the trunk. Flexion, rotation. When we do the exercise, we move the body like this. That is helped by those muscles. Also, a number of other important things. What are those? Defecation, when we press down. Punctuation, childbirth. You know that the doctors say push hard during the labor, right? So that is helped by your abdominal muscle. Okay. Vominating, when you vominate, you use the abdominal muscles. Okay. So forceful respiration. When you normally breathe, you use your respiratory muscles, intercostal muscles, and diaphragm for normal breathing, because those are the respiratory muscles. Now, if I ask you to do forceful breathing, then you do what? You use the abdominal muscles too. So for forceful respiration or breathing, you use the abdominal muscles too. When you do exercise, you will see the abdominal muscles are being used for breathing. So forceful breathing is screaming, coughing. Those are also helped by the abdominal muscles. So here you see those four muscles. First, the rectus abdominis, straight. This is one half, another half is here. They didn't show it this side. So this is the rectus abdominis, which is like this. And then in the side, you have the outermost one, external oblique. See, the fibers are going like this. Internal oblique, the fibers are going like this. And then innermost one is the transversus abdominis. The fibers are going like this, transversely. Okay. So those are the four muscles. Important both for your lab and lecture. I will definitely ask a couple of questions, at least you will get from this slide. Okay.
So internal and external, one runs this way and one runs that way? They both. Okay.
Okay, now the muscles of the pelvic floor. Pelvic floor is very important. You know, this is the pelvic cavity. This is the pelvic cavity, you all know that. Now, you see here that in the bottom part of the pelvic cavity, there is a big opening here. No bony support here, right? No bone is supporting the bottom part. So you have few muscles here. Those are the muscles of the pelvic floor that forms the floor of the pelvic cavity. So those muscles are important because this is a big open space here. Okay? So those muscles do what? Number one, if I ask you, those muscles do what? Support the pelvic organs. If you don't have those muscles, then the pelvic organs will go down. Right? Make sense? So that's why you need the pelvic floor, and which is formed by few muscles. So that's why it says the pelvic muscles, floor muscles, seal the inferior outlet of pelvis. Inferior outlet is sealed by those muscles. Support pelvic organs. So pelvic organs will not go down. Lifts pelvic floor to help release feces. So helps in defecation. And resist increased intra-abdominal pressure. So that is another important thing when you do coughing or vomiting or press the abdominal muscles down. A pressure is created here that can push the pelvic organs down. If the muscle is not there or this floor is not supported by the muscle, then the pelvic organs will have a tendency to go further down. So resist increased intra-abdominal pressure. Two muscles are the main muscles from the pelvic floor: levator ani and coccygeus. So remember those two names. This is the coccygeus muscle attached to the coccyx tailbone, and this is the levator ani. And levator ani or ani has two separate muscles. One is pubococcygeus and another is iliococcygeus. Just you don't need to remember those two names. Just know that two muscles form the pelvic floor: levator ani and coccygeus. Okay, so if I ask you, those muscles are the muscles of what? Those are the muscles of the floor of the pelvic cavity. You see that your urethra, vagina and the anal canal, those are guarded by or surrounded by the pelvic floor muscles. And another important thing is that those openings remain constricted, and they must remain constricted, right? Otherwise the feces will get out from the body, urine will get out from the body. You don't want that, right? So those openings must remain constricted, and the pelvic floor muscles do that, keep them constricted. When these muscles will relax, then the opening will get bigger. Okay? So that's why you need those muscles too. You remember I said that in the thorax you have some non-respiratory muscles. So here you can see some non-respiratory muscles. Pectoralis major is the largest muscle of the chest, thorax, but it is non-respiratory. If you remove the pectoralis major, under the pectoralis major, you have a smaller muscle that is called pectoralis minor. Minor is small, major is the main one. Okay? And there is another muscle there, intestine muscle, that looks like serrated knife. Have you seen serrated knife? Do you know what is serrated knife? Do you know? What is that?
Oh, you're asking me what a serrated knife is?
Yes,
A knife?
knife.
Yeah.
What? You can open like this, right?
Yeah.
Many branches, like you can open, if you open it, it will open like this. Many pieces of knives, right? So that's the serrated. Did you get it?
Like
Okay.
a Swiss Army knife?
Second?
You talking like a Swiss Army knife that has like different parts to that?
Yes. If you, sometimes the people keep in the pocket, they can take that. What is that called?
Swiss
Swiss
Army
Army
knife.
knife.
Swiss Army knife.
Serrated, yeah. So that is called serrated. And serrated is like this, and that muscle is like this. That is called serratus anterior. You see, it has many pieces like this, and each piece is getting attached to the rib. That's why it is called serratus anterior. Okay, so that is another muscle. So you see, those are non-respiratory muscles. They don't help in the respiration. Okay, muscles of the back of the thorax. If you see the back of the thorax, you have some muscles, trapezius, levator scapulae, and rhomboideus. These are pretty large muscles in the back of the chest, or back of the thorax. You see the trapezius. In this side, you see they did not remove the superficial muscles. In this side, they have removed the superficial muscle. So this is the half of trapezius, huge muscle. You know, this shape is like a kite. You know that you fly the kite. It's like this. So that's the trapezius. Okay. Present in the back of the neck as well as all the way goes down to the bottom of the back of the thorax. So this muscle has been named after the shape. Then you see, if you remove the trapezius, under the trapezius you have rhomboideus or rhomboid. Rhomboideus major and rhomboideus or rhomboid minor. Rhomboideus major is the large one and the minor is the smaller one. Both muscles are rhomboid shaped muscle. That's why they are called rhomboideus. So trapezius, rhomboideus, those muscles have been named after the shape of the muscles. Levator scapulae. Just think its name. It will levator. Levator means what? I told you before. Move up, elevate. So it will move the scapula upwards. That's why you see this muscle is coming from above and lower end is getting attached to the scapula. So when this muscle will contract, it will lift the scapula upwards. So this movement, you see, this movement, this is the function of levator scapulae. Uh, then, in the back of the thorax, we have these two muscles. Very easy for you to remember. This is the spine of the scapula. You know that in the back of the scapula now you have the spine. And above the spine, this is the supraspinous fossa. Below the spine you have infraspinous fossa. So in supraspinous fossa, why supraspinous fossa is there? The supraspinatus muscle is located here, and infraspinatus muscle is here. So now it is very easy for you to remember that. Supraspinatus above the spine, infraspinatus below the spine here. Okay? So those are the important muscles that you see in the back of the chest. Okay, so we are done with the muscles of the axial part of the body, the muscles of your skull, muscles of your vertebral column, muscles of your trunk. So we are done with the axial muscles. Then we'll talk about the appendicular muscles. Appendicular muscles are the muscles of the upper limbs and the muscles of the lower limbs. So let's take a short break, 5 minutes, then we will start the rest part. Okay, so let's start. The appendicular muscles are the muscles of the upper and lower limbs. So first we'll talk about the muscles of the upper limb. the muscles of the upper part of your upper limb here, they help in what? They will work on this joint, shoulder joint. So the muscles are in the upper part of the upper limb. They help in the movement of the shoulder joint. Okay? So you see here the muscles of the upper limb, they help in the movement of the shoulder joint. Important muscles are supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis. And two additional muscles, those are called synergists. You know that synergists provide additional force, helping hands. Those are coracobrachialis and teres major. Now, first four muscles, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, you have seen those muscles above the spine, below the spine, supra and infraspinatus. And teres minor and subscapularis, where they are located. Subscapularis, you remember the scapula has three fossa, supraspinous fossa, infraspinous fossa in the back, and subscapularis is the front. The whole front part of the scapula is called subscapular fossa. So subscapularis muscle is here, attached to the front of the scapula. So those three. And teres major and teres minor, those muscles are located under the infraspinatus muscle. Okay? So those are the locations of those muscles helping the movement of the shoulder. Now remember, those four muscles are called rotator cuff muscles. So if I ask you in the test that which four muscles belong to the rotator cuff muscles, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis. Okay, and three are named after the fossas in the scapula. You know that the scapula has supraspinous fossa, infraspinous fossa, and subscapular fossa. So those three muscles are located in those fossas. And another one is teres minor, not major. Remember, major doesn't participate in rotator cuff formation. Why these muscles are called rotator cuff? Because you know that the head of the humerus fits in the glenoid cavity here. And glenoid cavity, is it shallow or deep? Shallow. You know that shoulder joint is a weak joint, right? Because the glenoid cavity here is very shallow. I have mentioned that before. Okay. Now, those rotator cuff muscles get, if this is the glenoid cavity, those four muscles get attached to the side of the glenoid cavity, attached to the border of the glenoid cavity like this, and make the glenoid cavity a little bit deeper. Okay, so they are attached to the border, along the border, and make the cuff, make the cavity deeper. So that's why those are called rotator cuff muscles. So it's like this. This is your glenoid cavity, and supraspinatus, infraspinatus, subscapularis, and teres minor. Those four muscles, they will get attached to the side of the glenoid cavity. So here is the head of the humerus. Okay? The head of the humerus will be supported by those four muscles. Okay. Now the muscles of the arm. The muscles of the arm will work on the elbow joint. So always one thing, when you will study the muscles, one thing remember always, those muscles are above the joint will work on that joint. So the muscles above that joint will work on that joint. That's why when we talked about the muscles helping the movement of the shoulder, you have seen that those muscles are attached to the scapula. Scapula is just above the shoulder joint. So they will get attached here and will come down like this and will help in the movement of the shoulder. Now we are talking about the muscles of the arm. They will help in the movement of the elbow. Now if I ask you, the muscles of your forearm will work on which joint? This joint. Make sense? Because they are here, they will work on the joint just below them. Okay? So the muscles of the arm help in the movement of the forearm, works on the elbow joint. Okay, anterior muscles of the arm, brachialis and biceps brachii. Those are the cheek forearm flexors. Those are the main forearm flexors. Biceps brachii and brachialis. Brachioradialis is another muscle in the front of the arm. It helps in the function of the biceps brachii. The main muscle is the biceps brachii, and that is helped by brachioradialis. So brachioradialis is the synergist in this case. Posterior muscles of your arm are, the main one is the triceps. Triceps brachii is the main muscle in the back of the arm. So what's the action of that? It will cause the extension. The biceps brachii in the front, so it will cause the flexion. Triceps will cause the extension. Another muscle which is a synergist of triceps, that means synergist of extension, that is the anconeus. So anconeus is a weak synergist of extension of triceps. So this is the front of the arm. So you can see the biceps brachii is the main muscle. This one, and you can see the biceps. In some people, the biceps is very prominent, right? Those people do a lot of exercise. Their biceps is very prominent. Right? Sometimes we say that I will show you my biceps. That means what? Sometimes you read in the newspaper, even they use the term, right? President Bush showed his biceps to Iraq. What does it mean? Power, right? Or strength. So that's the biceps. Then under the biceps, you have another large muscle that is called brachialis. Since biceps is here, you don't see the main part of brachialis. But if you remove the biceps, then you will see this muscle like this. Okay? So that's the brachialis. And brachioradialis. Brachioradialis is another muscle that, just think the name. Its name has been given based on the attachment. This is the brachial part. So starting from the brachial part and going to the radius. That's why it is called brachioradialis. Okay? So brachialis must be in the arm because brachial part is the arm, and brachioradialis is the muscle that starts in the brachial part and ends in the radius. So you see that muscle here, brachioradialis, starting in the brachial part and going to the radial side, to the radius of the forearm. Now, if you see, I didn't show the back muscles. In the back, you have the triceps, so just remember that. Now, muscles of the forearm. Muscles of the forearm. See here, the forearm has two compartments. The anterior compartment, that's the front, and the posterior compartment, that's the back. Okay? So, anterior compartment is also called flexor compartment. Because, why it is called flexor compartment? Because you see here, these muscles here will go to the palm, front of your hand, and also some of those muscles will go all the way to the digits, fingers. So now, I'm repeating again, see here, starting from the front of the forearm and ending, some muscles are ending on the palm and some muscles are ending on the digits. So those muscles are getting attached to the bones of the palm here. They will do what? Flexion of the wrist. Make sense? They have no action on the fingers because the muscle is ending here, right? Starting here, ending here. So they will move the wrist. Those muscles are going all the way to the phalanges, to the fingers. They will do what? They will cause the flexion of the fingers. Make sense? So, two types of muscles in the front of the arm. Some are ending here, we cause the flexion of the wrist. Some are ending in the digits, they will cause the flexion of the digits. Okay? Then, in the back, posterior compartment, same thing. Some muscles are getting attached to the bones here, that is tarsal, carpal and metacarpal bones, and they will do what? They will cause the extension of the wrist, extension of the hand. And those muscles from the back are getting attached to the back of the phalanges, like this, back of the fingers. They will do what? They will cause the extension of the fingers, like this. Okay? So, anterior muscles are flexor muscles. Posterior muscles, you have seen that will cause the extension. Okay? So, posterior muscles are the extensors. That's why anterior compartment is called the flexor compartment and posterior compartment is called the extensor compartment because extensor muscles are there. Okay. Some forearm muscles will cause pronation and supination. Most of them will do either flexion or extension, but there are few muscles, they help in pronation and supination. What is pronation? If your palm is facing up, like this is supination position. And this movement is called pronation. Your palm is facing down. Now, this is supination, this is pronation, this is supination, this is pronation. Okay? So, remember the direction of the palm. This is supination position, and this movement is called the pronation. And from pronation to supination, that's the supination. Yes.
So is it the way that it's like sitting right there, or is it how it's turned?
Two things. What? If I ask you, see here, if I ask you, your palm is facing up, right? So what is the position of your hand? Supination. Remember, this is the position. I am not asking the movement, okay? This position is called supine position, supination. And if I ask you, which position is this? Pronation. Okay, now, the movement from supination to pronation, that movement is the pronation movement. This movement is the supination movement. Make sense? So this is what? This is what? This movement is what? Remember, where you are ending, that's the movement. Okay? Now again, where you are ending. So this movement is ending where?
Pronation.
This movement is ending where? Okay, so just remember. So there are a few muscles. They help in pronation and supination. Pronator teres will do pronation. Supinator is another muscle that helps in supination. Okay, now we'll see the flexors. That means anterior forearm muscles. Flexor carpi radialis. Just think that. If you think, it will make it very easy. So if I ask you, the flexors should be located in the anterior or posterior? Anterior, because it is the flexor compartment, right? And these are the flexions. So first thing, if I ask you flexor carpi radialis, that muscle must be in the front, not in the back. Is it clear? Because it is flexor. Then radialis. Which side is the radial side? This side or this side? Lateral is the radial, right? So it must be the radial side, not in the ulnar side. So if you just think those two things, you can imagine that that muscle must be here, right? In the front, but the lateral side, the radial side. Now, flexor carpi ulnaris should be in the front, but in the ulnar side. Make sense? And in between those two muscles, you have another muscle that is called palmaris longus. Long muscle ends in the palm. That's why palmaris longus in between those. Okay? Then another muscle, flexor digitorum. So now you tell me, flexor should be in the front or back?
Front.
Front. And digitorum, that muscle will end in the palm or digits? Digits. So digitorum will go here. Palmaris will go where? To the palm. Make sense? Now, if I ask you, just you already know, if I ask you that palmaris longus will cause the flexion of the wrist or the digits, getting attached here. Wrist. Make sense? It will not work on digits because it is not going to the digits. Then digitorum, flexor digitorum will do what? Flexion of the digits because they are getting ending on the digits. Phalanges. Okay? So digitorum, if you see the muscle is splitting like this. See here? The muscle, the tendons are going like this and getting attached. Tendons are getting attached to the digits like this. That's the digitorum. Flexor pollicis longus. This is pollis. Okay? Your thumb is the pollis. So if you see, the muscle is like this. See here, muscle is going to the pollis, like this. That's the pollicis. Okay? So if you see the muscle tendons are ending in these 4 digits, that's the digitorum. And if you see only going to this one, that's the pollicis. So if you just think a little bit, it's easy to identify. Okay? So here, now see those muscles. This is your radial side, thumb. So you see the flexor carpi radialis. Now remember one thing, that your brachioradialis, the arm muscle, is also coming down to the radial side that I have mentioned, brachioradialis. That's why you see the brachioradialis there, it's a huge muscle, and then flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris, and palmaris longus in between those two. Okay, in between those two. And palmaris longus, you see here, ending on in the palm. Now, the digitorum and pollicis, those are deeper muscles. So if you remove those superficial muscles like flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris, palmaris longus, if you remove them, you will see clearly the digitorum. You see flexor digitorum. The tendons are going to the digits very clearly. They are going to the digits. Which digits? These 4 digits. And pollicis, tendon of flexor pollicis longus. You see the tendon is going to the thumb. Okay, the muscle here. This is the muscle. Flexor pollicis. You see only one tendon is going to the pollis. That's why it's called pollicis. In the back of the forearm, you have extensors. Most of them are named as extensor. So extensor carpi radialis. Extensor should be in the front or back? In the anterior or posterior? Posterior, extensor. Then radialis in the radial side. So extensor carpi radialis in the back of the forearm and in the radial side. Extensor carpi ulnaris in the ulnar side, in the back. Extensor digitorum will get attached to the digits but from the back like this and will cause the extension. So those are getting attached to the back, they will cause the extension. Will pull like this, will cause the extension. Okay. Extensor pollicis. Just remember, extensor pollicis. There are 2, brevis means short and longus means long. If you see the tendon is long, that's the longus, and short is the brevis. Extensor indicis. This one you did not see similar muscle in the anterior compartment. What is that? This is the index finger. You know that this is the index finger. We indicate something by this finger. So the muscle that is going to the index finger from the back, that is the extensor indicis. We don't have any flexor indicis, but we have extensor indicis. Okay. Abductor pollicis longus, another muscle. This is the pollis, but it will cause what? Abduction. This is abduction, lateral movement. Abduction. And this is adduction, abduction. So it will get attached to the side and will cause the abduction like this. Okay. So those are the extensor muscles located in the back of the forearm, the posterior compartment of the forearm. So here you can see those muscles. This is the radial side, thumb. So you should be able to see extensor carpi radialis in the radial side. Then extensor carpi ulnaris in the ulnar side. And then these are the tendons of extensor digitorum. You see going to the digits. And indices should be, did they show here? No, they didn't show here. We'll go to the index finger, to this finger, and then pollicis, extensor pollicis longus. You see here that muscle is going to the pollis, the thumb. Okay, so those are the muscles you can see in the. Here is extensor indicis. Let's see, follow that. Extensor indicis. This muscle, you see, look carefully. This is the muscle, and tendon is starting here and going to the index finger. Okay, so that's the extensor indicis. Here, if you remove the superficial muscles, then you can see clearly the extensor indicis, extensor pollicis, extensor indicis, extensor pollicis going to the pollis, and yeah, so there are two pollicis, longus and brevis. Muscles of the hand, you have two sets of muscle in the hand. Hand means in your palm area, you have two sets of muscles. Those are called interossei muscles. Palmar interossei and dorsal interossei. Inter means in between, ossei indicates bones. Osseous. So, in between the metacarpal bones, those interossei muscles are present. And they do what? They help in fine movement of your fingers. You see here, those muscles are starting from the metacarpal bones, and the tendons are getting attached to the phalanges, that means finger bones, and they help in the fine movement of your finger. So when we use the fine movement, when you write or do painting or sketching or drawing, you use your, in fine task, you use your fingers. So those muscles help in fine movement of the fingers. Palmar and dorsal interossei. Why it is called, one set is called palmar? Because this is your hand, this is the palmar side, this is the dorsal. Dorsal means the back. So this is the anatomical position. So this is the back of your hand. So dorsal set is the dorsal interossei, and palmar is in the front. Okay, so we are done with the upper limb muscles. Now, the last part, the muscles of the lower limb. First, we'll talk about the muscles crossing the hip joints, and see here one thing. Those muscles are crossing this is your hip joint. So those muscles are crossing the hip joint from the front, like this, and going all the way down to the leg bones, like this, crossing the knee joint too. Now, this muscle here, when this muscle will contract, it will do what? This movement, right? This is the flexion of the thigh. Make sense? This is the flexion of the thigh. Now, if that muscle continues and gets attached to the leg bone, when this muscle will contract, it will do what? This is extension or flexion of the leg? It's extension of the leg. So flexion is this in case of your leg, and this is the extension. So that's why we say that anterior muscles will cause the flexion of the thigh. Flexion, this is the flexion of the thigh, but the extension of the leg, this is the extension of the leg.
So flexion is pulling up?
This angle is getting smaller, so this is flexion. When in any movement, the angle gets smaller, that's the flexion, okay? So here, you see, this is the angle here. So this is flexion, right? And this is extension of the leg, because this angle is getting bigger, okay? So extension and flexion. You get it? Okay. So the anterior muscles will cause the flexion of the thigh, but the extension of the leg. In your hip joint, all different kinds of movements are possible. For example, let me show you now the movements, then you will understand. So flexion is the movement in which the angle will get smaller, will be reduced. For example, flexion of the forearm. this is the flexion of the forearm. You see this angle is getting smaller. Make sense? And extension is opposite of flexion. That's it. Okay? So now see this angle is getting smaller, right? So this is the flexion of the thigh. And this angle is getting bigger. That's the extension of the thigh. Make sense? Now, so both flexion and extension can occur in the hip joint. Also, abduction and adduction. Away, and ad indicates coming towards it. So abduction is sideways, going away, and that's the abduction, and this is adduction towards the body, away from the body, sideways. That's the abduction. This is the adduction. That is also; those are also possible in the hip joint. Circumduction. Circumduction is if I ask you to draw a circle, the movement that will occur in the joint, that's the circumduction. So if I ask you to draw a circle like this is the circumduction of your shoulder. It could be a small circle or a big circle, whatever. Okay? You know probably you are not all familiar with the cricket. You know cricket, the game, cricket game. You know about baseball, right? All of you. It's very popular here. Cricket is very popular in England or Australia. Anyway, so I used to play cricket when I was in school. So in cricket, in baseball, you throw like this, right? In cricket, you can't fold your hand. You have to keep it straight. Okay? So that is circumduction. Next circle. So circumduction is also possible in your hip joint because you can draw a circle with your foot like this. You can do that on the ground. So that's the circumduction. Okay? And then rotation. Rotation and circumduction is different. If I show you here, this is what? You are drawing what? You are drawing a circle, right? So this is what? Circumduction. And this is what? This is rotation. In rotation, the axis is not changing. This is the axis, it's not changing. In all other movements, flexion, extension, circumduction, the axis changes. This one changes. But in rotation, it will stay same. So keeping the axis same, the movement around the axis, that is possible, that's the rotation. Like if I put a stick through your head, I'm not going to do that. Like this, okay? Or a rod passing through your head. Now if I ask you to cross the movement, only movement you can do is this. Around this, you can move your head like this. You cannot bend it, cannot do this. Okay? So that's the rotation. Will not move the axis. So just we'll see the muscles, identify the muscles. So you see here, this is the front of your thigh. In the front of your thigh, just in the middle of the front of your thigh, you have a straight muscle going down. Just in the middle of your front of the thigh. That is called rectus femoris. Why it is called rectus? Because straight muscle, and femoris is in the femoral part. You know that thigh is the femoral part of the body. Then another muscle you see that is crossing the thigh. From the upper lateral part side and crossing the thigh and going to the lower medial side. So the muscle that is crossing the thigh like this, that is the sartorius. Sartorius is also called tailor muscle. You know, tailors use, nowadays you don't see many tailors. In old time, people used to stitch the clothes. Okay, like take the clothes to the tailor and they will stitch it. Take the measurement and will make shirt or pant for you, right? Tailors. In old time, tailors used to sit on the ground and put the clothes like this and used to stitch like this. Okay. So since the muscle is going like this, that muscle is called sartorius. Sartorius means tailor muscle. Okay. Tensor fascia latae. Funny name. Tensor fascia latae. This muscle is easy because this muscle has short muscle part and long flat tendon. And that long flat tendon is called iliotibial tract. IT. Iliotibial tract. So if you see the iliotibial tract, this is the iliotibial tract that starts from tensor fascia latae. So this is tensor fascia latae, this is sartorius, that long muscle crossing the thigh. This is the rectus femoris, very easy because that's the main muscle in the very front of the middle of the thigh. Then another muscle you see here, that's the vastus lateralis. In the lateral side of the rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, and this is vastus medialis, in the medial side of the rectus femoris. So lateralis in the lateral side, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis in the medial side of what? Of rectus femoris. Make sense? And there is another vastus that you don't see because it is in between the lateralis and medialis. That means what? Under the rectus femoris. Because it is in between, that means it's under the rectus femoris. So that's why you don't see that. That is vastus intermedialis. So you see three vasti: vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and vastus intermedialis or vastus intermedius. Some places you will see intermedius, some places intermedialis. So how many vasti you have seen? How many vasti present? How many? Say loud. You're right.
3.
What are those? Yes, you're right.
The vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and vastus intermedialis.
Yes. So you got 3 vasti, right? And 3 vasti at the rectus femoris. How many? 3 vasti and 1 rectus femoris. Total how many? Say loud. 4. Those 4 muscles together called quadriceps femoris. Quadriceps femoris muscles. Quadri means what? Yes, quadri means 4. And quadriceps femoris are 4 muscles in the front of the thigh. Which 4? 3 vasti and 1 rectus femoris. They together called a group of muscles, that is the quadriceps group. And in the medial aspect, this is the medial aspect of the thigh. This is the medial aspect of the thigh. In the medial aspect, you see a straight muscle in the middle of the medial aspect of the thigh. That is the gracilis. Very nice, you can easily identify. Just in the middle of the medial aspect of the thigh. If this is the medial side of your thigh, just in the middle, going straight down. That's the gracilis. Okay? So those muscles are really large and pretty easy to identify. If you know where they are located, how they look like, it's pretty easy to identify those muscles. Okay. Now, another important thing here is the tendon of quadriceps femoris. From the quadriceps group of muscles, a tendon arises. So from the lower end of quadriceps muscles, a tendon originates or arises. That tendon is called quadriceps tendon. Very simple. It's the tendon of quadriceps. That's why it is quadriceps tendon, also called tendon of quadriceps muscles. Now, that tendon gets attached to the patella, kneecap. You see that tendon, you can see there, tendon of quadriceps femoris. That gets attached to the kneecap. And then does what? You see, if this is your kneecap, that tendon gets attached to the kneecap from above and then covers the whole kneecap like this. Covers the kneecap like this. And then in the lower end of the kneecap or patella, they get fused and goes down and gets attached to the tibial tuberosity. From the kneecap to the tibial tuberosity, that part is called the patellar ligament. Now, the question is, you see here, same structure. This is the quadriceps tendon getting attached to the upper part of the patella, and then it is covering the patella like this, and to the lower end, again getting together and going down and becoming a tendon, becoming a ligament. Why this part is called tendon? Because muscle to bone. Why this part is ligament? Because bone to bone. Okay. So we know that ligament connects bone to bone and tendon connects muscle to bone. Same structure, but one is ligament, another is the tendon. Okay. So muscle to bone is the tendon, bone to bone is the ligament. And patellar ligament has a clinical significance. What is that? Knee jerk testing. Knee jerk testing. You know that sometimes you go to the doctor will hit your patellar ligament with a small tiny hammer and see if your leg shoots forward. If your leg extension of the leg or if the leg shoots forward, that tells that your reflex is there, your reflex is present, okay? That means your nervous system is working good. Okay, so that's the front of the thigh. Okay, now in the back of your thigh, here you need to know the hamstring muscles. 3 muscles are together called the hamstring group of muscles. What are those? Biceps femoris. Biceps has how many heads? 2. And remember, you have biceps here too. That is the biceps brachii because this is the brachial part, and that is the biceps femoris because that's the femoral part. So biceps femoris, semitendinosus and semimembranosus. Those 3 muscles together called the hamstring muscles. Probably all of you have heard hamstring. We say that hamstring muscle pull, right? That happens in hamstring very often. Those 3 muscles together called the hamstring group. And then in the back of the upper part, very upper part of the thigh, you have gluteus muscles. Okay? Gluteus maximus is the largest one, and if you remove the gluteus maximus, under that you will see gluteus medius. If you remove the gluteus medius, under that you will see a smallest one, that's the gluteus minimus. So just know that there are 3 gluteuses in the gluteal part. That's the gluteal muscles. So you see here the back of the thigh. So you can see gluteus maximus, huge muscle. And this is a good location for intramuscular injection. In 2 muscles, we often give intramuscular injections. Which 2 muscles? One is gluteus maximus and another is what? Here. Which muscle is here? Delta shape. Deltoid. Deltoid. Okay. So deltoid and gluteus maximus, those muscles are often used for or preferred for intramuscular injection because those are huge muscles. You can see only a small part of gluteus medius here from outside. Now, most part of gluteus medius is under the gluteus maximus. That's why you see only a small upper part. Now, if you remove both gluteus maximus and medius, then you will see the gluteus minimus, the smallest one, very deep one. Then you see the hamstring muscles. Biceps femoris. Since it is biceps, it has 2 heads, long head and short head, and semitendinosus and semimembranosus. Those 3 muscles together form the hamstring. Okay, the abductor muscles of the thigh, those muscles, adductor, not the abductor, adductor. So you see here, the adduction is this one, adduction of the thigh towards it. Now, adductor muscles should be located in the medial side, not here, right? Because this is the adduction. So these muscles will pull the thigh towards it. So it should be in this side. So adductor muscles, 3 of them are named as adductors. So adductor magnus, adductor longus, adductor brevis. Other 2 adductors are pectineus and gracilis. You know that when I showed you gracilis, I told you gracilis is the muscle located in the very center of the medial aspect of the thigh. So definitely that muscle will cause adduction because it is in the medial side of the thigh. So those muscles are mostly located in the deeper part. You see adductor, brevis, longus, magnus. And those are getting attached to the femur, medial side of the femur. And will pull the femur towards you, towards the midline, right? So that's why those are adductors. And the pectineus muscle, that muscle works during child birth, during labor. Pectineus muscles help in the birth of the child because you see that muscle is attached to the pubis of the hip bone. Just for you to know, interesting thing, attached to the pubis and attached to the pubis, and when delivery, child birth occurs, this symphysis pubis gets very loose. This joint becomes very loose, and the bone, these 2 bones can move a lot and open this space, make it bigger. Like this symphysis pubis gets now very loose and open like this, and the pectineus muscle helps in the movement of the pubis part of the hip bone. Okay. So just know where those muscles are located. So you know which muscles belong to quadriceps group, 3 vasti and rectus femoris, right? I have mentioned that before. Which muscles belong to hamstring groups, semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and biceps femoris, those 3. Okay? So if I ask you in the test, you can know that. You have seen this hamstring muscles. Now, the muscles of the leg. In your leg, you don't have many muscles like your hand. Your hand has many muscles. You remember anterior compartment of your hand means, forearm. Anterior compartment of the forearm has many muscles, posterior compartment. But in your leg, you don't have that many. You have few muscles. Just remember these muscles. In the front of your leg, you have tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum longus, and extensor hallucis longus. And in the lateral compartment, you have fibularis longus and fibularis brevis. Because you know that fibula is the lateral bone of the leg, right? And the main function of fibula, when I talked about tibia and fibula, I told that tibia performs a number of functions. What are those? Transmitting the weight, right? Tibia is the larger bone of the leg. It transmits the weight. It is the bone that giving the weight to the foot. Fibula doesn't have many things to do. Only thing fibula does, provides attachment to the muscle, leg muscles. Okay? So fibularis longus, fibularis brevis, those muscles are lateral muscles because fibula is the lateral bone and get attached to the fibula. Now the back of the leg, you have couple of large muscles. The largest one in the back of the leg is the gastrocnemius. So see here, the back of the leg, the huge muscle that you can feel, that's the gastrocnemius. Now if you remove the gastrocnemius, under the gastrocnemius, if you remove this one, you have another huge muscle in the back of the leg that is called soleus. So gastrocnemius and soleus, those two are huge muscles in the back of the leg. Now, in the front of the leg, tibialis anterior. That's the only muscle. If you feel the front of the leg, you will feel the bone. Actually, you don't have many muscles. Only muscle is attached to the front of the tibia, that's the tibialis anterior. So very simple. Attached to the front of the tibia, that's the tibialis anterior. And in the lateral side, this is the lateral side, you have the fibularis muscle. Okay? So since fibula is the lateral bone, fibularis muscles are in the lateral side. So fibularis longus, fibularis brevis, those are the muscles. Now, gastrocnemius and soleus, just know those two are the large muscles in the back of the leg. And here, gastrocnemius, you can see, has two ends, the lateral and two heads, the lateral head and medial head. And from the lower end of gastrocnemius, the largest tendon of the body arises. That's the longest tendon of the body. And that tendon is called tendoachilis or tendocalcaneus. Why it is called tendocalcaneus or Achilles because this tendon, lower end, gets attached to the calcaneus, the heel bone. And another name of the heel bone is Achilles. So this tendon is called tendon Achilles or tendon calcaneus. And this tendon is very powerful because when you walk or run, you know that every time, in every step, you are moving the heel up and down, up and down. And that tendon is pulling your heel up and down, moving down, up and down. Okay, so every step you are using that tendon Achilles or tendon calcaneus. Now, if I am not going to do it, if I cut your tendon Achilles, then what will happen? You won't be able to walk at all because to walk you need to move your heel up and down, right? So you won't be able to move at all. And sometimes in some sports, what happens? This attachment gets detached. Tearing of tendon Achilles occurs, and that person will not be able to walk at all. Yeah, it can be attached. Okay, so another muscle, my favorite, popliteus. You know popliteal area in the back of the knee. So you have a fossa there, like this, and popliteus is located in the popliteal fossa. So that's a small muscle, popliteus. Okay. So here you see they have removed the gastrocnemius. So under the gastrocnemius, as I have mentioned, we have another big muscle, that's the soleus. But they have also removed the soleus from here. So they have removed the gastrocnemius, then they have removed the soleus too. Then you can see the deeper muscle, flexor hallucis longus. Now one thing, you think that this will be helpful for your lab too. This is your foot. Just think that this is your foot. So these are the toes. Now this is what? Flexion or extension? Flexion of the toes, right? And this is what? Extension. So now this is your leg. So those muscles are going down from the front of the leg. They will do what? Extend, because they are pulling the toes from up like this. This is extension, right? So anterior muscles, anterior leg muscles will do what? The extension. And posterior leg muscles, see here, this is the back of your leg going down and getting attached here, and will do what? Flexion. So the muscles going down from here like this, they will cause the extension, and the muscles going from the back going like this will cause the flexion. In case of your hand, remember, now go back. In case of your hand, these are the anterior muscles. Anterior muscles are doing what? Flexion. And posterior muscles are doing extension. But in case of your leg, the anterior muscles are doing the extension of the toes, and posterior muscles are doing the flexion of the toes. So just think that where the extensors and flexors should be, in your hand, in your leg. Okay.